Are fighting type Pokemon really that good? Whoa, I'm gonna find out by beating a Hardcore Nuzlocke in one of the most difficult games in the series on challenge mode, meaning any Pokemon that faints will have to be boxed forever, and I will be only allowed to capture the first fighting type I find per route. There are a good amount of encounters, but since we're not allowed to use legendaries and mythic, it gets a bit harder, which is why I'm kinda grateful for having Tepig as our starter being a fire and fighting type. I named him Gemini, and then had to put him in the PC box since he was not a fighting type until he evolves. But luckily for us, we managed to encounter a Rioli at Flotchessy Ranch just before we took on the first gym. Leo is going to be extremely important here as the first gym leader is a normal type, and just to be even more prepared, I then proceeded to defeat hundreds of Purloins and Patrat until eventually Leo gained enough friendship to evolve into the almighty Lucario. And just like that, now it's time for the battle against our first gym leader, Sharon. And since this is on challenge mode, he now has 3 Pokemon instead of 2. But this shouldn't be a problem, since Leo is now a steel and fighting type. This means any normal or dark move, which are basically the only move his Pokemon has, will not do much damage on Leo at all. And luckily for us, Leo was just on the level cap, and by defeating the Patrat, he gained enough experience to level up to level 15 and learn Force Palm, which is going to be extremely beneficial for us since Sharon team consists of normal types. And with that, Lillipup was down, forcing him to bring out his last Pokemon, Pidove. I went for a Force Palm, almost defeating him, as he goes for a workup, which honestly doesn't matter at all. And with one more attack, we annihilated Pidove and defeating Sharon and receiving the basic badge. And with the next gym leader's level cap being level 19, I brought back Gemini and evolved him into a Pignite. Gemini is going to be very important here, since Leo's best move against Roxy is Quick Attack, as fighting type is not good against poison type. This means we'll most likely rely on Pignite for the whole battle. Coughing, weirdly enough, has exceptionally high defense, and as Flame Charge is a physical move, defeating Coughing was very time consuming and annoying. The whole battle was just Gemini spamming Flame Charge and Coughing using Venoshock, which both of those moves honestly did like no damage at all. But with Flame Charge increasing our speed, we had advantage. Not really, but with one more attack, Coughing was down. Next up was Grimer, and she wasn't too bad, besides the part where she had to disable my Flame Charge, meaning we had to use Tackle, as Gemini's other move was only Arm Thrust. It got very close, but luckily Pignite's speed was far superior than hers. And now it's Whirlipede. Even though it was a bug type, Gemini unfortunately got his Flame Charge disabled, therefore we had to switch into Leo. And fortunately for us, Leo is immune to poison type, and with Whirlipede other move being a rock move, this made the battle even easier. This is because Rollout did like 5 HP per hit, as rock type is ineffective against steel type. So after many hits being traded using Quick Attack and Rollout, Leo eventually got the win against Whirlipede, defeating Roxy and obtaining the Toxic Badge. Oh yes, we are reaching one of the greatest city of all time. Before we take on Berg, we are able to access the Relic Passage. From here, I caught a Timber with a lax nature and named it Virgo. I then proceeded to Route 4, where we caught a Scraggy with a careful nature and called it Scorpio. With Scorpio having plus special defense and minus special attack, it was a perfect fit, as Scrafty is typically a physical attacker with high special defense. Now it's time for the Bug Gym Leader Berg. This battle is a bit of a struggle, since Bug type somehow resist to fighting type. But luckily for us, since we got Gemini, we have an advantage with our firepower. Well, that's what I thought. If Dwobble wasn't also a tanky rock type, with Dwobble having such high defense and Rollout being our only super effective move, which is also a physical move, this battle was very painful. And what's worse is that this whole time I was using Flame Charge instead of Rollout. Oh my, what was I even thinking? However, I did notice that later on. Not too late, I guess. Once this Dwobble is taken out, the rest of Berg's team should be a piece of cake. This is because all his other Pokemon are just Bug type, or even better, Bug and Grass type. You poor thing. And then after withstanding some super effective rollout, I finished Dwobble with some of my own. And just like that, Carablast was next. And with Gemini missing the rollout, this means we now can go for a super effective Flame Charge. This is because rollout typically goes for 5 turns unless you miss. And now his ace Pokemon Lee Vanny. Since the fire type move is time for super effective against him, one Flame Charge burned that poor thing to a crisp. And for his last Pokemon, it was a poor little Shelmet, which got obliterated with a Flame Charge, meaning we defeated Berg and receiving the Insect Badge. As I leave Castelia City, I run into Chorus, who demands to have a Pokemon battle. The fight of course was over about in 3 seconds, since the guy only has Steel type against our team of bulky fighters. And then after defeating him, he kindly gave us some protein, which I then gave it to my Pokemon, making them even more buff. Just before we left the desert, I picked up a TM for Dig, which is going to be extremely important against the next gym leader. And then not long after, Virgo evolved into a Gerda. I then made my way to Lostland Forest, where I caught myself a Heracross with a neutral nature and named it Aries. After all this preparation, we are now ready to take on the electric gym leader Elisa. Honestly, the only advantage she has against our fighting type is her flying Emolga. This is because she has Aerial Ace, which is super effective against our whole team besides Leo. Instead, Emolga used Volt Switch and switch into Zeb Striker and getting hit with a Strength. Sadly, with Zeb Striker's base stat speed being 116, he outspeeded Leo, but this does not matter. With one dig, Zeb Striker was taken out. Next up was Fluffy, and since she's only electric type and slower than Leo, one dig took her out with us not losing any of our health. This then forces her to bring out her cute little spider Joltik, which triggers her unnerve ability, but this didn't affect us since held items were not allowed for us. Because she was also a bug type, a single dig did not take her out, which made us get paralyzed and decrease our speed drastically. She then landed an energy ball, which we retaliated with strength and finishing her off. Now with her returning and last Pokemon, Emolga. She went for a typical Volt Switch, but luckily she did not take us out. We even landed a critical hit strength and almost defeating her. But without putting Leo's life at risk, we switch into Virgo. And with Virgo's superior defense, he survived the aerial ace and even tanked the incoming Volt Switch. And just like that, we landed the super effective Rock Throw and defeating Emolga, which also means we defeated Elisa and obtaining the Bolt Badge. Just before we take on Clay, we can just barely evolve Gemini into an Emboar. And to be even more prepared for the battle, I went back to Relic Passage to get some red shards so I could teach Leo Ice Punch. And with that, it's time to take on the 5th gym leader, Clay, with his ground types. Clay is a very difficult gym leader in general, so with challenge mode, this is going to get very intense. With Krokorok's Intimidate weakening our physical attack and a Sandstorm being set up, things can get a bit tricky here. What's worse is when the unstoppable Excadrill comes out, but I have a plan. This plan involves us continuously using Bulk Up and then Low Kick. By doing this, our attack will keep on rising and our defense will increase to prevent any physical attacks, which are the only type of move Clay's whole team has. And since the Torment was used on Virgo from Krokorok, we are kinda forced to do this anyway. And with Onix missing 2 Rock Slides in a row, this could have not gotten any better. But sadly, Onix had Sturdy, meaning this also gives Clay the chance to heal him. And then with another Bulk Up, we get even stronger. Unfortunately, we got flinched by the Rock Slide. And just when I thought Onix was about to go down the next turn, he went for an explosion, defeating himself, and surprisingly, not much damage was dealt to Virgo. Luckily for us, Slant Slash wasn't too much of a challenge, with Low Kick almost one-shotting him and with Bulk Up continuously increasing our attack and defense, I think we were a-okay. With Rock Slide not flinching us, we annihilated Slant Slash with another Low Kick, and now it's time for his ace Pokemon, Excadrill. Not gonna lie, I was actually kinda worried about that slash. But after seeing how much it did, I was very confident that we can tank another one, even if it was a crit. Sadly for him, with a single low sweep, Excadrill was down. And as Clay defeated and Quake Badge unlocked. Just before leaving Driftvale City, we had to enter a world tournament. But since our team was like 10 level above everybody else, we obliterated that tournament with ease. And one more thing, I went back to the move tutor and taught Leo Thunder Punch, since the next gym leader is gonna be a flying type. Afterwards, I even evolved Scorpio into a Scrafty. And with that, we have to face the 6th gym leader, Skylar. Not only are our Pokemon strong against us, but they also outspeed everything on the team. This forces me to lead with Leo, since he wouldn't take any super effective damage from Swoobat. And weirdly enough, since she used Attract instead of any other damaging move, a single Ice Punch was all we needed to defeat her without losing any of our health. Now, with Swanna being timed for weak against electric moves, I thought I could take her out in one move. But she survived the hit and her Citrus Berry activated. I then thought she would go for a Hyper Potion this turn, which is why I went for Sword Dance instead of another attack, as a single Thunder Punch could not take her out before. Luckily, we survived the surf and finished Swanna off with a Thunder Punch, making her bring out her terrifying Sigilyph. And with Leo being one-shot, I switched him out for Scorpio. And since Scorpio was also a Dark type, we did not get hit by the Psychic. With a single crunch where we also landed a critical hit, Sigilyph was taken out, meaning her last Pokemon Skarmory is out next. Since Scorpio has relatively high defense, we withstood the Aerial Ace and landed a Swagger. From here, we switch out Scorpio for Gemini because Fire is strong against Steel. And fortunately for us, Skarmory hit himself because of the confusion. Somehow, Gemini outspeeded the Flying Metal Bird, so we landed the Heat Crash, almost defeating her as it triggers her Citrus Berry. But with another hit of confusion, we survived the potential one-shot of Aerial Ace, and defeating her the next turn and receiving the Jet Badge. Next up, we're taking the plane to catch our next encounter, Arceus. Not really, but we did have to face our rival Binky, and for some odd reason, he only has 3 Pokemon, like how? So we beat him up without breaking a sweat and then proceeded to Route 14, where we caught a Meanfu who's a neutral nature once again and was named Libra. I then randomly found a Cobalion by mistake, but sadly we could not catch it. Wow, yay, another one. Hello. Not long after, Libra evolved into a Mean Shell, which honestly looks so cool, like someone from Digimon. And now it's time to face the 7th gym leader, Drayden, and his Dragon type. So far we had a pretty good time with this run. No deaths so far, it's looking pretty good. I started off with a Sword Dance to sharply increase our physical attack. And with Leo tanking the super effective Revenge hit, we finished Stradigan off the next turn with an Ice Punch, which makes him bring out his next dragon, or bird I should say, Otaria. And with Otaria being a flying and dragon type, a single ×4 Ice Punch did the job. Similarly for his next Pokemon Flygon, he was also ×4 weak against Ice type. Therefore with one Ice Punch he was taken out. And now for his ace and last Pokemon, Haxorus. For some odd reason, Leo was faster than Haxorus. Therefore with a single powered up Ice Punch he was gone. And with that we defeated Drayden and obtained the Legend Badge. After defeating Drayden, Team Plasma threatens to freeze all over Unova. They started off by completely destroying Opposite City with ice. And like the hero we are, I said, stop it. Therefore, we now have to face one of the 7 sages, Zinzolin. But since we're a fighting type trainer, this was the biggest overkill and easiest match of all time. Before we can take on the rest of the Team Plasma, we have to go up against the final gym leader, Marlin. He's got a team of 4 water types, which doesn't give either of us a clear advantage. I begun the battle with the usual sword dance, and thankfully Wailord's Earthquake did not take us out. Since Wailord has horrible defense, a single Thunder Punch took him out, making Marlin bring out his second Pokemon, Caracosta. As Caracosta has the ability Sturdy, the Thunder Punch could not defeat him, but we did manage to get the 10% chance of paralyzing him. He went for a Shell Smash afterwards, raising his attack and speed but lowering his defense, and with the next turn, he was gone. Honestly, Leo has been carrying most of the late battle so far, so hopefully we do not lose him. Continuing the battle, Mantine with his weak defense also got defeated by a single electric punch, and now for his final Pokemon, Jellicent. And with Leo's speed far superior than his, he was also defeated with one move. And that's the final gym leader defeated and wave badge unlocked. Another one of you? Are you serious? Well, hello there. Thank you, I guess. Now you get out of here. Before we take on the Elite Four, we gotta wrap up the story. We got a second trip to the cinema, and then there were a bunch of Team Plasma fights. The only one that's really noteworthy was the final fight against Chorus. Not really. Since he only used Pokemon that are Steel type, and us being strong fighters, we defeated him with ease. Honestly, the truly challenging fight is against Ghetsis, especially because you have to fight Pokémon Black right before that. Therefore, you have no break in between, so whatever you lead with in the fight against Pokémon Black is also your lead against Ghetsis. This is gonna get crazy. Alright, here it comes. For this battle, I decided to lead with Scorpio. This is because I know Ghetsis will start the battle off with a Cofagrigus, meaning it will be weak against dark type moves. And with Black Kyurem charging up a free shock, we landed a free Brick Break on it. And then on the next turn, he unleashed the destructive power on Scorpio, almost taking her out. But luckily, we did land another Brick Break before we switch out for Leo. Kyurem then charges another free shock, giving us the opportunity to outspeed him the next turn, and finishing off with a Force Palm. Immediately afterwards, we now have to take on the final Team Plasma boss, Ghetsis. And just like we predicted, he begun the battle with his Cofagrigus. Therefore, we sent our Scorpio and went for a super effective crunch right away, and thankfully defeating it with a critical hit, but this also means our Shed Skin abilities gets replaced with Mommy. Next up was Seismitoad. He went for an Earthquake which didn't do too much damage, which gives us the chance to land a Swagger. Unfortunately, he did not get confused and landed a crazy Drain Punch, almost defeating us. So after the crunch landed, I switch out Scorpio for Aries. This is because Seismitoad has no super effective moves against Aries. Sadly, the next turn, Aries missed a Mega Horn, but Seismitoad also missed his attack. But since Seismitoad health was so low, Ghetsis used a full restore, which heals him and snapped him out of the confusion. But unfortunately for him, Aries landed the Mega Horn and annihilated the giant frog. He then brings out Electros. Since Electros doesn't have any weakness, I went for another Mega Horn. And with his horrible speed of 50, we somehow defeated him with a single hit. Next up was Hydreigon. Even though he looks extremely scary and almighty, with a single Mega Horn, Aries destroyed the 3-headed dragon. And with that, Ghetsis then brought out another frog. I went for a super effective Aerial Ace, dealing a good amount of damage as he goes for a puny Poison Jab. And then with another Aerial Ace the next turn, Toxicroak was taken out, which Ghetsis then bring out his last Pokemon, Drapion. I went for a Dig as he missed his Poison Fang, and then landed a Dig the next turn, but unfortunately got poisoned by the Poison Fang. Even though Aries doesn't have the ability Guts, which raises his attack by 50% when poisoned, with one more Aerial Ace, Drapion was gone. And with that, we defeated Ghetsis. Before battling the Elite Four and Champion, I got challenged by Binky for the final last time, and this time he got 4 Pokemon instead of 3. But that made no difference. With Leo powered up with one Sword Dance, his whole team got wiped out completely, standing no chance at all. And just like that, we finally arrived at the Pokemon League, where all the toughest trainers are. So here is my final team with all of them being maxed out to the level cap. First up, we got Gemini with Heat Crash, Flare Blitz, Hammer Arm, and Assurance. Then we got Leo with Ice Punch, Sword Dance, Force Palm, and Shadow Claw. Next up is Virgo with Thunder Punch, Bulk Up, Hammer Arm, and Ice Punch. Then we got Scorpio with Brick Break, Crunch, Ice Punch, and Substitute. Then there's Aries with Brick Break, Aerial Ace, Shadow Claw, and Mega Horn. And then for the lucky last, Libra with Fake Out, U-Turn, Force Palm, and Drain Punch. And now we are ready. As we enter the Elite Four, we get the privilege of deciding which order to face the members. So with that, we're going from left to right. And with Shanto being a Psychic type user, we are definitely going to be in trouble. I set up a Substitute as she goes for a Shadow Ball, but we still managed to keep the Substitute. I landed my Crunch the next turn, dealing a decent amount of damage. And a Shed Skin ability got replaced with Mommy again. And she got rid of my Substitute with another Shadow Ball. So I went for another Substitute the next turn as she missed her Will-O-Wisp, and giving me the chance to finish Cofagrigus off with another Crunch. Next up was Golurk, which is one of the Pokemon that I'm very worried about. This is because he has Brick Break, which is extremely deadly against Scorpio. After almost defeating it with a Crunch, I Brick Break destroyed a decoy. But since I knew the AI will use a full restore the next turn, I went for another Substitute. And luckily for us, on the next turn, we also landed a critical hit with Crunch. And with the decoy still out, this battle was going very well for us. Following was Chandelure, as since she was holding a Choice Scarf, she outspeeded Scorpio Scorpio and broke his substitute, but we still managed to land the crunch before switching out into Ember. This is if we are assuming she goes for another Fire Blast, which allows Gemini to tank it since he's also a fire type, which is proven to be correct as she goes for not one but 2 Fire Blasts in a row, giving us the opportunity to land a super effective Assurance and defeating Chandelure. And with that, she brought out her next Pokemon, Drifloon. Since Gemini is too low, I switched him out for Leo, predicting she'll go for Psychic because Gemini is also a fighting type. I then went for an Ice Punch, almost defeating it as she goes for another Shadow Ball, which Leo can definitely tank it. And then with one more Ice Punch on the next turn, Drifblim was down, forcing her to bring out her last Pokemon, Bayonet. For some odd reason, Bayonet was holding a Muscle Band, which increases physical attack, but for some reason, she went for a Psychic instead. Therefore, with another Shadow Claw, Bayonet was down. And that's the first Elite Four defeated, which only gets harder from here. Next up, we are taking on Grimsley and his Dark types, which is without a doubt the best matchup for our fighting types. I began the battle with Leo as I anticipated that Leopard will go for a Fake Out, which then will set off Leo's Steadfast ability when he flinches and raising his speed. And with Fake Out being a Dark type move, we barely took any damage. Leopard then went for an Attract, which is probably the worst thing that could have happened for us, but we still managed to use Sword Dance, but she landed a critical hit Aerial Ace. And of course, Leo was too in love. She then went for the same move again, and once again, Leo was still too in love. And then finally at last, Leo finally snapped out and faced reality and finished the kitty cat off. For his next Pokemon, he sent out Crocodile, which had the ability to Intimidate, weakening our physical attacks. But honestly, it didn't matter. We outspeeded her, and then with a single critical hit with Force Palm, Crocodile was defeated, making him bring out Scrafty on the next turn. And just like the red Crocodile, the guy with the mask had the same fate. And then next up was Absol. And as Leo's physical attack is off the chart right now, the poor dog also got beaten up. And now for his last Pokemon, Bishop. But unfortunately for him, Leo outspeeded the Bishop and made her perish. And that's the second Elite Four defeated. The third Elite Four we'll be facing is a Psychic type expert, Caitlyn. This was a very challenging battle. She started off with Moshana, whereas we went for Scorpio being immune to Psychic types. I begun with a substitute as she landed basically the guaranteed charge beam because of her zoom lens. I then went for a Crunch, bringing her health to almost the red zone. And with her missing the Hypnosis, we followed it up with an unnecessary critical hit with Crunch, which then forces her to bring out the nightmare of this battle. Even though Reuniclus has Focus Blast, we still have a decoy out, giving us the chance to land a super effective move on her before the substitute fades away. But since I knew her next Pokemon will be the almighty Metagross, I try to keep the decoy out until we fight that beast. This is because Metagross has extremely high defense, so even though if we have Crunch, it probably won't take him out. So my plan is to tank basically the guaranteed Hammer Arm, since that's the only move he has that Scorpio is weak against. And with Hammer Arm reducing his speed, this gives me the chance to use Gemini and hopefully outspeed him with a Flare Blitz, and hopefully one-shot him, but we will see. And with Caitlyn using a Full Restore, this battle is taking a very long time. And what's worse is that leftover she's holding. But with one more Crunch the next turn, Reuniclus is finally down. And now it's time for the one and only Metagross. And now the plan begins. I switch out Scorpio for Gemini, and as we anticipated, Metagross used Hammer Arm against us, and thankfully Gemini tanked it. Now with Metagross speed being reduced, Gemini can outspeed that monster. And with an intense Flare Blitz landing, we one-shot that Metal Spider. And with that, Sigilyph comes out next. We switch out Gemini for Leo since she has nothing strong against us. We withstood the Ice Beam, and then on the next turn we set up a Sword Dance as she goes for a pathetic Psychic. And with Psychic dealing not enough damage to take us out, with a single powered up Ice Punch, Sigilyph was taken out. Therefore she then brings out her final Pokemon, Gothitella. And with Leo being the GOAT he is, he also one-shot that poor thing to dust. And that wraps it up for the third Elite Four with one left to go. It's time for the final Elite Four battle, and also our twin you could say, with Marshall also being a fighting type specialist. I also forgot to mention, I taught Libra Acrobatic for this battle, which is basically going to be the carry for this whole fight. And since we're not holding any items as we aren't allowed to, Acrobatic's power now doubles to 110, which is absolutely insane. And with Throw taken out, Lucario comes out next. And with a single menacing Drain Punch, we suck the living soul out of Lucario, which also gives all Libra's health back. Following was a Minchao. He outspeeded us and flew straight into the sky. Therefore I decided to switch Libra out for Leo, as he should be able to tank it. And luckily he did. I then went for an Ice Punch, dealing damage about half his health, but with our luck, he missed the high jump kick. And assuming he'll heal the next turn, I switch back into Libra. And then on the upcoming turn, I finish him off with a powerful Acrobatic. And that's Minchao down and Conkeldurr out next. And since Conkeldurr didn't have any super effective move against us, I was confident we should be able to tank his move and take it out with ease. And with Libra's speed far superior than his gut ability, which increases his physical attack by 50%, did not help him. And now his final Pokemon, Sock. And like the rookie I am, I made the rookie mistake by forgetting Sock had Sturdy, which then gave him the chance to learn a Retaliate. And yeah, that's my first death in this whole run. It was honestly very sad. May you rest in peace, Libra. And with that, we defeated Marshall, who's also the final Elite Four. Now we finally entered the secret basement. I was honestly very nervous for this battle. Like, have you seen Iris' team? It's so freaking stacked. So now it's time to take on Champion Iris. She might possibly be the strongest champion in all of base game Pokemon, with incredibly strong and super bulky Pokemon alongside with a Haxorus. And just like Guesses, she also has a Hydreigon. I begun the battle with a Sword Dance as she goes for a Fire Blast which almost took Leo out. Luckily, Leo was faster, so with a single and powered up Ice Punch on the next turn, Hydreigon was down, which then forces Iris to bring out another dragon called Druddigon. And with Druddigon horrible speed of 48, we outspeeded him and annihilated him with an Icy Punch. Following was Aggron. Since Aggron didn't have Sturdy, I was confident that Leo can one-shot her with a ×4 super effective Force Palm. And now it's time for our ace Pokemon Haxorus. With Haxorus having Mold Breaker, it was pretty much useless. And just when I thought I was about to die because I didn't one-shot her, I froze her instead. Also because I forgot she had a Focus Sash. However, just as I thought, she went for Full Restore the next turn, which means she isn't frozen anymore. But somehow we managed to pull a critical hit with Ice Punch and defeated the Haxorus. Next up was Lapras. And since Lapras has horrible defense, one Force Palm took her out. Now with her last Pokemon, Archeops. And with Archeops' poor defense, a single powered up Ice Punch also defeated him, which now means we are the champion of Unova. Well, that's it. This game really brought back a lot of memories for me. Nostalgic music, the battles, the story, the Unova Pokemons. It really is one of the greatest Pokemon game of all time. And yeah, that's all for me. I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I do, and I'll see you guys in a bit. Goodbye.